I was recently diagnosed with cancer, and I'm okay. This episode isn't about fear. It's about capacity. Capacity to digest what you take in, physically and emotionally. Capacity to regulate when life feels heavy. Capacity to recognize when you've had enough. Capacity to say no before your body has to say it for you. And what happens when we override it? And what happens when we ignore it? And what happens when we live beyond it? Because the body always tells the truth. The question is whether we've been taught how to listen. Whispers come long before collapse. If you've been saying, "I'm fine," while your stomach tightens, your energy drops, and your nervous system runs on empty, this episode is for you. The doctor looked at me and said the word, cancer. And strangely, my first thought wasn't fear. My first thought was, of course, because my body had been whispering to me for years, through the gut, through the tension, through the quiet knowing that something wasn't right. But like many of us, I had learned to override the whisper, to keep going, to keep caring for others, to keep saying, "I'm fine," until my body decided it has said enough. Welcome, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Natural Healing at Your Fingertips podcast. I'm Marci Lubore. This episode begins a brand new miniseries called Listen to Your Whispers Before the Body Shouts. And today we are starting with episode 39. If you are new here, you may want to explore episodes 31 through 38, the Soul Contract of Healing miniseries, where we began looking at the patterns, stories, and inherited ways of caring that shaped how we move through our lives. This next journey brings that inquiry into the body, learning to hear what your body, your life, and your own inner knowing may already be whispering, so that when something in your life begins asking for change, you can meet it without abandoning yourself. What you're about to hear today may shift the way you understand what your body has been trying to tell you. Because sometimes what we feel in the body isn't simply something to push through. It may be stress, emotion, depletion, maybe a need we've overridden, or a truth we become too busy carrying everything else to hear. We don't have to decide what it means yet. We begin by noticing. I know what it is to override myself. I know what it is to reach a threshold. I know what it is to have life rearrange what matters. Let me hold a mirror while you hear what is true for you. And if you're here, there's a part of you that may know this path too. Because maybe you've become so good at caring that you stopped noticing what was carrying you and the cost it had. And your body has been trying to show you how to come home. So over these next 6 episodes, we're going to listen to the whispers, to the sensations, to the places in your body that may have been asking for your attention. Not to fix you, not to give you one more thing to master, but to create enough space for you to hear yourself again. Because healing doesn't happen through force. Sometimes it begins simply by becoming quiet enough to notice what is here and listening without immediately overriding it. And I'll be right here with you, one point, one breath, one layer at a time, like we usually do. In this series, we're learning how to recognize the early signals of stress, self-abandonment, and nervous system dysregulation before they can escalate into breakdown. In this episode of Listen to Your Whispers Before the Body Shouts, we explore how the body signals stress long before collapse. Stomach anxiety, trauma stored in the body, and nervous system dysregulation are often early signals that the body has been living beyond its capacity. This really is not about fear. It's about literacy. Literacy is the ability to read your own body, to know the difference between fullness and bracing, between fatigue and depletion, between I'm fine and I'm overriding. The body speaks in sensation long before it speaks in symptoms. This is not metaphor. There is an actual word for it. Interoception. Interoception is your body's ability to sense what is happening inside you. The signals from your organs, your breath, your gut, your nervous system. Sensations of fullness, tension, warmth, tightness, fatigue, and ease. Before diagnosis, before any lab work, before any labels, you feel first. And sensation is the first language of body wisdom. Tightness, fullness, fatigue. How about cold hands or butterflies in your stomach? A braced belly. A sigh that you can feel that just won't come. That's the alphabet. And sometimes what the body is trying to spell out is something we haven't yet had the space to hear. It's not just stress from today, but emotion, experiences, or a need that never had a place to be acknowledged. Sometimes it can feel as though the body is carrying what never had a place to go. We don't have to decide what it means. We simply begin by listening. And when we ignore the alphabet long enough, the body eventually writes in capital letters. And those signals travel through the fascia, which is the connective tissue network that wraps around every muscle, every organ, every nerve, and even around every single cell. Fascia is part of the connective tissue network through which we experience movement and tension, pressure and sensation. It carries sensation. It responds to movement and to load. And it is part of the living landscape through which we experience our bodies. It is continuous. There is no part of you untouched by it. It's like an egg white membrane that communicates to every single cell in the body. This is where structure and spirit meet, where biology and consciousness converse. Your body is not separate from your awareness. It is the instrument through which awareness speaks. And listening to your whispers is how you return to your own body wisdom. There is something important to understand about the body. Your body is not only biology. It also reveals your biography, your life story, the experiences you've lived, the stress you've carried, the emotions you've held, the roles you've stepped into long before you were ready. All of that leaves an imprint on the body, not as punishment, but as information. We are all walking similar human journeys, that of love and loss, responsibility, stress, and hope. But the stories that shape those journeys are different for each of us. And those stories shape how the body adapts, protects, and sometimes even struggles just to keep up. Your stomach might tighten when life feels overwhelming. I know mine did. Your chest may hold grief that never had a voice. Your nervous system may stay alert because it learned early that safety was uncertain. This is not weakness. It is the body doing exactly what it was designed to do, remembering what mattered. And when we learn to listen to those whispers with compassion instead of judgment, the body can begin to soften its grip on the past. You don't need more advice from me or anyone. You may just need to tap into your body wisdom. And sometimes we only begin learning that language when the body finally speaks loud enough that we can't ignore it anymore. That's what happened to me. Before we go further, take a breath with me. Place one hand over your upper abdomen and let your shoulders soften. And let your jaw unclench. Inhale gently into your ribs and your back and fill up your vessel. And exhale slowly through your mouth. Again, inhale in and exhale slowly through your mouth. We begin in awareness. I recently was diagnosed with cancer. Specifically, a GIST, a gastrointestinal stromal tumor, in my stomach and my abdomen. I underwent surgery and it was removed. A GIST is a tumor that forms from specialized cells in the digestive tract. It's often connected to changes in cellular signaling, which most cancers are. It's how the cells know when to grow and when to stop. In my case, there was a mutation that disrupted that normal stop signal, and certain cells kept growing when they shouldn't have. And over time, that created a large bleeding tumor in my stomach and my abdomen. And that bleeding led to critical iron deficiency anemia, and my body could no longer compensate the way it once did. I required blood transfusions and intravenous iron because I could not rebuild what I was losing. It was serious, and I am here. And I am deeply grateful for the blood donors whose generosity became life-giving replenishment in my body. Biology is complex. Genetics are real. And sometimes cells misfire. What I am exploring here is not blame. It is awareness. Because long before there was a diagnosis, there were whispers. I didn't notice it at first, and then I explained the whispers away. I felt full quickly, sometimes after just a few bites. I wasn't hungry the way I used to be. There was fatigue, the kind you call busy. Cold hands and feet, dark circles under my eyes, pale skin. Nothing too dramatic, just subtle. I noticed it, but manageable, overridable. You don't miss the whispers because you're unaware. You miss them because oftentimes you were trained to override them. So I kept explaining it away. Stress, adrenal fatigue, a demanding season, something I would recover from later. But now I understand something I couldn't see then. The gist of it was not just what was happening in my stomach. The gist of it was how long I'd been overriding my own capacity. There is an irony in all of this that I can see now. The tumor I had is called a GIST, a gastrointestinal stromal tumor. And the acronym for it is literally the word GIST, which simply means the essence, the heart of the matter, the deeper truth underneath everything else. And in many ways, This experience revealed the gist of it all for me. Suddenly, something I had been teaching became something I was living. The whispers had been speaking for a long time. I just hadn't understood what they were saying yet. And I understand listening differently now. The whisper isn't always a symptom. Sometimes it's a quiet knowing that something in the way we are living is asking to change. So the gist of my diagnosis became the gist of the lesson. Because the gist of it all is just this. The body doesn't resist healing. It resists self-abandonment. And I do not have the stomach for that anymore. And neither should you. Emotional suppression doesn't always disappear simply because we keep moving. Sometimes what hasn't been expressed continues to shape how we feel, how we respond, and how we move through the world. What you don't say may come out sideways. Irritability, emotional distance, low maintenance but secretly overwhelmed, fatigue you can't explain, headaches, random tears, feeling lonely in rooms where people love you, and still saying, "I'm fine." What you swallow to keep the peace, your body eventually tries to metabolize. There are whispers before the body shouts. What if it wasn't only mine? I was the oldest daughter in a family of 5 children. When my parents divorced during my teenage years, the emotional tone in our home shifted. I learned to read the room, to anticipate tension, to care for others before tending to myself. Not because anyone told me to, because that's what nervous systems do in instability. They adapt quickly. They become vigilant. They become very capable. They become the strong one. And sometimes that strength becomes identity. But identity and adaptation are not the same thing. Not inherited disease, inherited tone, inherited tolerance, inherited over-functioning. Yep. If some of what you've been metabolizing was patterned before you were conscious, you are allowed to lay it down too. There was also a season of extraordinary demand before this diagnosis. A hurricane, a fire that took my cottage and all my possessions, the displacement, and then caring daily for my mother after she fell and injured both of her hands. She was in a rehab center and I sort of became her hands. I fed her, I dressed her, I drove her daily when she needed to go to doctors. I functioned. I showed up, and I told myself I would rest later. When fatigue came, I assumed adrenal depletion. And when fullness came quickly, I thought it was just stress. When I felt depleted, I thought recovery. What I didn't see clearly then was that I was living beyond my capacity. Override isn't necessarily loud, but it is consistent. And this is where my story may begin to sound familiar. Because many of us, especially women, become extraordinarily good at carrying. We read the room, we care for others, we carry what needed to be carried. And sometimes we carry it for so long that we stop noticing the signals our own body is sending. Sometimes you don't collapse because you're weak. You collapse because you were capable for too long. While I was in the hospital before my surgery, words came to me. I began to see something I'd been studying and speaking about for years. The ancestral grief and anxiety my mother carried, and the emotions that were never spoken, never expressed, the thoughts that were swallowed and held in the body. So many of us inherit that, unspoken feelings, unprocessed grief, anxiety that lives quietly in the belly. The stomach can be one of those places where we notice what has become difficult to carry or digest. Anxiety may be felt here. Grief may be felt here. Even the words we haven't known how to say may seem to tighten something inside us. And sometimes, if we're willing to ask the question, we may discover that not every emotion in our body began with us. Think about that. Some emotions belong to our own life experiences, and some may have been carried forward through generations. Grief and anxiety have a way of traveling through families, quietly sometimes, subtly, without anyone meaning for it to happen. And generation after generation, we pass it forward. And as I lay there realizing my body no longer had enough blood to run uphill, I understood something deeper. This has been a silent journey of grief. Something that has been weeping in my belly for a long time. And in that moment, I could feel how much of my own story had been asking to be witnessed. And in that moment, something inside me said very clearly, this pattern ends with me. Because I am strong enough to face the truth and conscious enough to choose a different future. And if you're listening right now, you may be the one your lineage has been waiting for too. Not through anger or not through blame, simply through awareness, through truth, through allowing what was never allowed before. Love, honesty. Maybe it's truth, and certainly feeling. The tabula rasa, a clean slate, for family alchemy and for conscious living, so the generations after us do not have to carry what we carried. So our children and their children can live lighter, freer. The whispers had been speaking for a long time. I just hadn't listened yet. And that is what this series is about. Learning to recognize the whispers earlier before the body has to shout. This truly is not an episode about cancer. It is an episode about capacity. Capacity to hold emotion without bracing. Capacity to take in nourishment without shutting down. Capacity to recognize when your body has had enough. And most importantly, capacity to stop digesting what is not yours. Capacity is not pushing through. It is knowing when your body has had enough. And body wisdom honors limits before the collapse enforces them. Ask yourself, where in your life are you pushing through instead of noticing you've had enough? When we strengthen discernment, we reduce strain. And when strain reduces, your entire body's inner terrain stabilizes. You know, the stomach doesn't digest food. It can also be one of the places where we first notice that something in our life feels difficult to digest. As I mentioned, tightness, maybe nausea, that knot you can't explain, a braced feeling in your belly, a feeling that something simply isn't sitting right. And rather than immediately deciding what those sensations mean, we can become curious. What is here? What have I been pushing through? What needs my attention right now? What have I known but not yet allowed myself to hear? This isn't about fixing your stomach, and it isn't about forcing an emotional meaning onto every sensation. It is about increasing your capacity to notice what is happening inside of you, without immediately overriding it. Because healing doesn't begin with forcing a release. It begins with listening. And maybe that's listening to our intuition a little bit better. And with creating enough space to notice what's here. And allowing your body wisdom to reveal what is true for you. What's true for me may not be true for you, but we do have the capacity to listen. Now that we've named the whispers and the realization that followed, we move into the part of the practice that helps the body settle. And in every episode, I bring forward simple tools that help your nervous system recognize safety again. 1 point, 1 essential oil, 1 herb, 1 frequency, and sometimes a mantra. And each layer speaks to the body in a different language. Touch, scent, emotion, warmth, sound, and repetition. And together they help the body move from tension towards regulation. And they help the whispers soften. And they help you begin listening to your body wisdom again. So if your stomach has been bracing, we're going to give it 1 place to land. And before we add anything new, we begin with contact. 1 point. Because healing doesn't require complexity, it just requires tension. There's a place between the base of your breastbone and your belly button. Midway. It's along the midline of your body. And this is a very special acupressure point called Conception Vessel 12. It lives on a meridian that runs straight up the center of you, from your pelvis, through your stomach, through your chest. It is the meridian of creation, of nourishment, of what you take in and what you bring forward. I call this special point the capacity alarm point, because when pressed and it feels tender or sore, it is information, not pathology, not telling you what's wrong, but it's information about your capacity to hold before you override, and about how much you've been carrying, and about where you've been bracing instead of digesting, whatever that may be. Truth, motion, whispers. For me, this point becomes a place to pause and notice what may not yet have been given my attention. Stress I've been pushing through. Anxiety I've simply normalized. Fear I've been managing quietly. Doubt I've swallowed instead of voiced. A truth I haven't yet given myself permission to hear. I'll share how to locate and stimulate Conception Vessel 12, and we will do this together. All you really need to do is follow my cues. Take your left hand and place your pinky finger on your belly button. And now span your hand and rest your thumb on the bottom of your breastbone. That's it. And the space in the middle, where your ring finger can reach, right along the midline of your body, this is a capacity alarm point. Place 2 or 3 fingers gently on this point. I like to use my index and my middle finger. And simply rest there. No digging, just contact, deep enough that you can begin to feel any sensation. And begin 1 small circular motion. And then a subtle push-pull motion up towards your breastbone, and then slightly pull it back down towards the belly. And then out to the left side, and then out to the right side. A small motion is really enough. Continue that. And let's breathe in for a count of 4. And exhale for a count of 4. And again, breathing into your back ribs. And let the front of your abdomen soften without forcing it. And exhale. Continue this motion with your hand, whatever's comfortable, small circular motion or the push-pull motions. And let's continue this for about another 30 seconds. And simply notice what arises for you. Does it feel guarded under your fingertips? Is your stomach braced? Is it tender? For me, especially as I heal from stomach surgery, this point is very sore sometimes. And I don't interpret that as failure. I interpret it as intelligence. It's my body saying, there's still integration happening in here. Simply ask yourself, what have I been digesting that isn't mine? What truth have I been holding in my belly? What anxiety have I normalized? What fear have I called strength? Where has my voice been repressed in the name of peace? You do not need to answer quickly. Just notice what your body does when you ask. This is how we build capacity, layer by layer, and not by forcing, but simply listening. One point, one oil, one herb, one frequency. We don't overwhelm the nervous system. We add the support in layers. And that is how regulation becomes sustainable. So let's continue this motion for another 5-10 seconds. And to close this energy, simply brush your fingertips across this point and your upper abdomen. Just place your hand gently for a moment and release. Now that the body is a point of contact, we're going to invite in emotional alchemy. And plant intelligence has a way of reaching places that words just simply can't reach at. Roman chamomile is one of my favorite essential oils. It's very gentle. She doesn't demand, she doesn't push. She softens what has been bracing. And if you have Roman chamomile essential oil, place a diluted drop on your wrist and pause before you inhale. Let your body anticipate safety and a sense of calm, and then breathe it in slowly. Or massage a small amount lightly over your upper abdomen and let it soak in. If you don't have the oil, imagine the scent. It's soft and sweet and floral and warm and calm. Roman chamomile is a small yellow flower, very small, with white petals and a yellow center. Your body does not require the physical oil to receive the frequency of this calm. Your imagination can carry the same doorway. So let chamomile whisper to you. You don't have to hold everything. And notice what shifts when you finally stop overriding the whisper. Feel the calm. Warm, sweet, floral in your body. And if your heart is asking for a gentle next step, I invite you to click the Shift from Stress to Bliss in 60 Seconds link in the show notes. Let your fingertips give your body the calm it's been craving. And when you feel the softening, you can share it with someone you love. We've touched the place that holds tension, and we've softened it. And now I'd like to bring warmth, not intensity, but warmth, with an herb. Ginger is a familiar herb and is very warming to our tissues. It's spicy and slightly sweet, and it's warming as it moves through the throat and into the belly. If you have ginger tea, I invite you to brew a cup and hold the cup in both hands before you sip. Really just let the heat register in your hands. Feel the warmth in your palms. And let your nervous system recognize that warmth is safe. And then sip slowly. And feel it travel down. Notice if your upper belly responds, even subtly. And if you don't have ginger tea, you still know the sensation. You know the scent. It's the warmth of ginger candy, the bite of a ginger snap cookie, that spicy sweet heat that spreads and lingers. Let your imagination call that forward for you now. Your nervous system does not require the physical tea to remember warmth. It remembers sensation. Let that familiar warmth touch the part of you that has been bracing, softening, letting go. Sometimes the whisper is not pain. Sometimes the whisper simply slow down. Sometimes the body is not asking for more effort. It's simply asking for warmth. Like a warm blanket, cozy feeling. It's very calming to the nervous system. I like to bring in sound healing and frequency for nervous system coherence and to just resonate with our bodies. And you may hear 528 hertz beneath my voice. This frequency is often associated in sound healing traditions with coherence and repair. We know that certain tones are shown to influence the nervous system regulation and even the cellular stress responses. Because sound travels through water, and your body is mostly water. So let the tone move through you and your tissues. Not to fix, but simply to harmonize. Rest your hand again over your upper belly and feel for rhythm, even breathing. When regulation increases, repair becomes possible. When the strain reduces, your body's inner terrain is stabilizing. Taking a few breaths here. You can even add another hand on your heart. Just breathe in this sound healing for a few breaths. I'll give you a few moments. There is another way the body releases what it has held captive. Not through explanations and not through analysis. Through your tears. When we override emotion, it does not disappear. It lives in fascia, in your diaphragm, in the upper belly, in the subtle tightening that never fully relaxes. And when safety returns, even slightly, the body may choose to release through tears. For me, tears are cleansing and release the stressful feelings in my stomach. They are how I am honoring my process and how the chemistry releases through tears without words or feelings. It's really been fascinating to see how they well up and rise, and the desire to push them back out of being stoic, but recognizing that they are part of a healing path. And here they are. Researchers have studied tears. Emotional tears contain different biochemical compounds than reflex tears, like from cutting onions. They are measurably different, and I think you probably know what I mean. The body knows how to release what it has been carrying. When I allow tears, I feel the tightness in my stomach soften. It feels like chemistry leaving. Not weakness, but movement. On a deeper level, it's something that my soul is finding equilibrium through these tears. They restore balance in me and a reset, and they cleanse. And if your tears are your body's way of washing the tension from your belly, what have you been holding that's ready to be released? As I sit here now with half a stomach and a wider awareness, I find myself reflecting. What changes when I honor my limit before my body has to enforce it? You don't have to earn rest by collapsing. We are all allowed to stop while we're still standing. Here is my mantra to calm my nervous system. I digest only what belongs to me. I listen while the signal is still soft. Say it with me if you want to. I digest only what belongs to me. I listen while the signal is still soft. If that feels true for you, you're welcome to share it in the comments as your own declaration. Before we close, place a gentle hand over your heart and another hand over your lower belly. Feel the quiet there. Feel the steadiness returning after our practice today. Feel what you notice when you're no longer asking yourself to push through. Today you may have recognized something you already knew, but perhaps you hadn't given yourself the space to hear. I honor what you recognized, and I honor the deeper trust you are cultivating, one breath, one moment, one choice at a time. I'm walking this with you. If something in you is still curious, not urgent, not pressured, not another thing you need to fix, but quietly wondering, what have I been carrying? What is actually mine? What did I learn to hold because it once helped me belong, succeed, or survive? What may no longer belong in the life I'm creating now? I invite you into a complimentary 20-minute ancestral wisdom audit. This is not about deciding that everything you're experiencing came from your lineage, and it isn't about giving you another healing project to complete. It's a gentle conversation where I hold a mirror while we listen together, and we can begin noticing the roles, patterns, expectations, and ways of caring that may have traveled with you into this chapter. Some inherited, some learned, some chosen, and some that may have simply have served their purpose. We listen for what is still true, what still belongs, and what may be asking to be laid down. And what your body, your life, and your own inner knowing may be whispering about the woman you are becoming. Because you don't need someone else to tell you who you should become. Sometimes you simply need enough space to hear yourself again. If your body recognized itself somewhere in this conversation, and you feel that quiet pull to explore what is underneath it, you're welcome to email me at marci@luminoushealing.me and ask me about the Ancestral Wisdom Audit. We'll begin there, not by fixing, not by forcing, but by listening. And now, let's seal what you remembered today. Let this moment settle into the wisdom of your body. Make time for yourself. Please create space to listen to your own whispers and heal yourself with me. When you listen to your body, you interrupt the collapse before it begins. And when you honor your limits, you restore capacity instead of overriding it. When you share this work, you help awaken another soul who's been living beyond her threshold and give her permission to soften before her body has to shout. This is how we change the terrain inside our own nervous systems, inside our families, inside the generations to come. So share this with somebody that you love, another girlfriend, your mom, a daughter, or a sister, an aunt, a grandmother. One point, one breath, one moment of body wisdom at a time. Body wisdom honors limits before collapse enforces them. This is the mission. You are the movement. You are always the medicine. And listening so you can heal before the collapse is the new rebellion. I love you, and I'll meet you here next time on Natural Healing at Your Fingertips.